Okay, Mark Heath here with, it's not John Travolta, it's Suffolk's own Arnold Allen, Suffolk's own UFC superstar Arnold Allen, who fights icon of the sport, Max Holloway, in Kansas City, just a few days away. Arnie, as ever, thanks for your time. I know you're a very busy man. You've just been training today. How's things?
Yeah, very good. Everything's it's been a very rough camp, but it's a rough camp for probably a rough fight. He's a very dangerous veteran, and yeah, we all know how he fights. He's a tornado, isn't he? Sort of full of like energy. Comes forward, he's throwing a million punches, and I've had the kind of camp to resemble that to prepare for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not been my favorite of camps, but nothing great comes without a bit of hard work.
Exactly. So you've really been pushing yourself, have you, in camp? Because obviously this is a
Yeah, yeah,
five-round main event. As you say, he's extremely high-volume cardio guy. So
yes.
you had to go to some dark places, I'd imagine, training for him.
Yeah, just it's one of them ones trying to push the pace and trying not to burn out. And I know I'm getting older. I find these things you have to find the balance of these things. Not like when I was 22 and just 3-4 sessions a day, 100% every session, and I didn't even think about recovery. So now I've got the tools from those years of hard work. I just have to figure out how to best implement them as fit and as
Yeah.
sharp as I can.
I guess the first question before we get rolling with all the stuff we've got to talk about is, how are you? Because this fight was originally kind of penciled in for UFC London, wasn't it, in March? And then you hurt a rib, and our rib
Yeah,
injuries, I know because I've had one myself. Some of the most painful injuries you can have. One of the few
yeah.
injuries, it actually gets worse when you lie down. So how is all that?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, perfect. It was just like nothing major. It wasn't like a big break or anything like that. It was just like
Mm,
a little tear in the cartilage. So it was kind of well, it was very frustrating to not be on that London card. But then it was like you don't usually get these opportunities twice when you have to turn them down. And then a few weeks later, they came back and said, "Look, we can do a month later. How's that work for you?" And I'm like, "Actually, that's absolutely perfect. That works perfectly." So yeah, yeah. It's
month later, main event as well. Fantastic. We'll
yeah,
talk. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before we get going, though, I just want to ask, because this is probably the first time, but this is clearly a big fight for you. Your face is going to be everywhere. People are going to be hearing your name. Maybe casual fans who haven't heard of you before will maybe
yeah,
be seeing you for the first time here. And I want to talk a little bit about your journey kind of to the sport, because on paper, you're a lad from a village in Suffolk, not a traditional kind of fighting mecca. It's
yeah.
not New York. It's not London. Um, so I thought we'd talk a little bit first of all about how you've got here, because you've gone
Okay,
from starting quite young, haven't you? I
yeah,
think your background was boxing. You were fighting MMA young. I remember covering you almost 10 years ago now, when you were
mm,
fighting in Cage Warriors as a young guy,
yeah.
and now you're here on the very verge of a title shot. So how did it all start for you, Arnie? When did you first walk into any kind of combat sports gym, and how did it develop?
Yeah. So as a kid, I was always very sort of interested in like combat sports, and as me and my brother used to watch like all the animes growing up and the martial arts movies, and like Jackie Chan, like the original Jackie Chan movies, and Jet Li and Bruce Lee. Obviously, those guys were sort of a big inspiration to us, and me and my brother were always practicing techniques on each other, and yeah, then that progressed into sort of begging my mum to pay for the pay-per-views to watch the boxing. I was a huge Ricky Hatton fan growing up, and
Yeah,
I wanted a box, and that was sort of one thing I always followed. And obviously, being English, every lad plays football, and I wasn't as good as the other lads at football. Um, so I think that was one of the things that pushed me into going into this, is being crap at football, is trying to find my thing. Like I was kind of just playing football because all my friends played it, and that's what we did, and that's what everyone did. And then because I had that passion for martial arts from watching it, and I didn't really know any gyms around, and then yeah, as I grew up, I found a few gyms around, and we got into the gyms and locally training with Mark Nixon, who and
yeah, yeah.
training in Ipswich with Rory at King's ABC, where there was the amateur gym there. And yeah, my dream as a kid was to go to the Olympics and turn professional as a boxer, but it just didn't work out. Maybe it could have worked out, but I was very impatient as a kid, and
Yeah.
I wasn't as active as I'd like to be as an amateur boxer, and I see other guys boxing 10 fights in the season, and I'm sitting there with like 1, 2 fights, and just like what's going on, politics or whatnot. But yeah, so
How
I
did
started.
the transition happen then? From sounds like you were concentrating on boxing to begin with and doing a bit of Muay Thai with Mark, I'm sure. How did
Yeah,
the transition go from there into MMA?
so I train. So I got kicked out of school, so I had a lot more spare time than the other kids,
Yeah,
and so instead of going to the naughty boy school I was meant to go to, um, I'd get the bus into Ipswich, and then I'd go to the gym on Turret Lane where I'd go boxing, and I'd do my boxing, and then when boxing was finished, I'd get the bus all the way back to Felix, so to train with Mark Nixon and do a bit of MMA or Muay Thai, like grappling or anything,
yeah,
and MMA, and then I was training both, and like I said, I was frustrated at not having fights in the boxing, in the amateur boxing. And then the guys at the MMA gym offered me, like Mark said, "Oh, we can get you a fight next weekend if you want." And I'm just like, "Okay, yeah." Like I know nothing about this sport, but I'll have a go. And I'd obviously watched it as a fan, but yeah, just that hunger for competition. They were offering me fights, and the boxing wasn't providing it. So yeah, I took the opportunities, and it's sort of through competition. I just pursued it a little bit more.
yeah. Well, it's fair to say it's worked out, certainly. Can you
Yeah.
remember, Arnie, like the first time you thought, do you know what? I could be really good at this. Like, was there like a light bulb moment when you realized that you were kind of better than other people?
Uh, Not necessarily. It was more that I just enjoyed what I was doing, and I feel like when you enjoy, you love your work, it's easier to do a good job at it, and
Yeah,
it was that passion to learn and train and do all the required things to get better. Like coming from boxing, going into jiu-jitsu, like I lost count of how many times I got submitted in my first few years training jiu-jitsu, and but there was something about that I enjoyed, and it was the learning. Like I was like, I'm so behind the blue belts or the purple belts or whatever that it's kind of exciting to try and catch them up, and you know
yeah.
get triangled 10 times in your first session. It's like, all right, well, next week is 9 times, so yeah.
Do you still feel like that even now? Like you're learning and developing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's every day is a school day of MMA. Like you travel somewhere or you see a fight on the weekend and someone does a new technique, and or not even a new technique, just someone tries something different, and it kind of like opens up a whole new avenue for everyone. And then everyone's training something new, and it's yeah, it's one of those sports. You don't stop learning. As soon as you stop wanting to learn, you're done. It's a very progressive sport. It doesn't stop.
Yeah. And when did you take that step then from doing it as I guess kind of a pastime slash hobby to thinking, right, I can make a living doing this? Because I
Yeah.
saw an interview with Jack Mason, one of your early coaches, saying
Mm.
you were working at Felixstowe Docks for a while and kind of training on the side.
Yeah.
When did that decision come to really go for it?
Oh, to be honest, it was my fault. Like the whole time, as soon as I walked into a martial arts gym or boxing gym or whatever gym, that was my fault. I've always sort of carried the idea of like go all the way or like not at all. So
Mm.
um, yeah, it's I did. I think one of the things that really kicked me up the ass to do it was actually work experience when I was about 13 in high school. I think I did 2 weeks in an office in down the docks, like a logistics, like doing the paperwork, and
Yeah.
it was like the worst 2 weeks of my life. And I was just like, you know what? I never want to work in an office in my life. And yeah, then I just loved what I was doing with the MMA. Even just being around the gyms, whether you train, it's just a good. Even the hard times it's good times when you look back at it. It's a
Mm.
nice environment. Yeah, I'm surrounded by good people, and we're all on the same sort of journey. But yeah, like probably from that moment, I was like, I want to pursue this as a career.
Yeah.
Anything but a real job.
Yeah, not working in an office, but it certainly worked
Yeah,
out for you. And now we're on the verge of every time I speak to you, it's the biggest fight of your career, clearly, because you've been
yeah,
going up the rankings like that. Unbeaten in the UFC, 10-0 there. You've only lost once, and that was
yeah,
years ago in Cage Warriors. Now, though, you are fighting an icon, a legend
yeah.
of the sport, someone who's dominated the sport. He's been world champion, went unbeaten for 5 years in Max Holloway.
Mm,
And surely if you win this fight, the title fight will be next. It has to be.
Yeah,
So how are you feeling then? What are we a few days out from the fight with Max Holloway? He's a guy I'm
yeah,
sure you must have watched growing up. How does it feel now to be actually knowing you're going to fight him?
yeah. It's it's. I never asked for anything really. My whole career, my problem is not asking for things, and everyone
Yeah.
always said, "Oh, you need to call this guy, you need to call that guy." And I've always said when I feel I deserve the opportunity, I'll ask for it. And when I beat Dan Hooker, I asked for Calvin Cater, and then when I beat Calvin Cater, I asked for the opportunity with Max, and it just feels like the right time. The only way is up. They've got me ranked fourth at the minute. He's the best guy available. That makes sense for me. The fight that makes sense is him, and he's the best guy to get me into a title shot. And with his resume, I don't think it could be denied. I think we match up quite well. Um, Obviously, I like the fight. It's a style that suits me, I think, and it's a fun fight for the fans as well. So, it's not going to be two blokes holding each other on the fence. It's going to be a fan-friendly fight.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been saying for a long time, this is one of the best fights that could be made. It's potential fight of the year for me all day long. What do you make of Max as an opponent? As I say, you've surely watched him a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot of tapes out there on him. He's had more fights in the UFC than you've had fights,
yeah.
full stop. So what do you make of him as an opponent in terms of his strengths and his weaknesses?
Um, yeah, I rank him really highly. Obviously, he's one of the best featherweights ever. A
Yeah.
lot of argument for him to be like the number one featherweight of all time. There's a lot of, but yeah, mentally he's seems unbreakable. He's a cardio machine. He's never deterred. You've seen him fight, even at lightweight. He took some big shots off Poirier, and he just,
Yeah.
same old thing. Just soaks him up, keeps walking through. Same game plan. Like, okay, well, going back in the fire. Let's go. Yeah, I rank him really highly, and obviously I enjoy watching his fights as well. So from a fan perspective, but I think those strengths are going to be his weaknesses. Like for me.
Okay. What about the psychology of fighting Max? Because, like yourself, he tends to be, and I'm sure he will be in fight week. He's a very respectful, very kind of modest, very humble guy. You don't really hear him trash talking opponents
Yeah,
until the fight starts, and
yeah,
then inside the octagon, he can be or has a tendency to be. That's when the talk starts. We've seen him do things like slipping shots against Calvin Cater,
yeah,
and while he's shouting that he's the best boxer in the UFC. Obviously, he famously tried to show Ortega how to defend himself from punches
yeah.
during that title fight they had. So in the cage, he's quite a kind of he's a different character almost. Are you prepared for that?
Yeah, 100%. It's as soon as I signed the fight, I was like, oh, I hate to see this fight. Like two really nice guys, two of my favorite guys. So I'm like, no, no, no. He is not a nice guy. Maybe outside the cage, he's a nice guy, but yeah, no. When he's in there, he's ruthless, and it's part of the gamesmanship. It's part of his mental. It's the mental warfare, and just maybe. I think being a bit Suffolk simple is going to play on him, like he's going to be saying all these things and it's just going to go. So, yeah, that's the whole thing. Cool, calm, and collected, and yeah, maybe playing a bit dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I mean, I said there he's had a lot of fights and he's been in a lot of tough fights, a lot of kind of back and forth wars.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that could play into your hands in terms of maybe there's quite a lot of miles on his clock?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Like no one knows where he is physically and mentally and all those things. But you've seen the fights. We've all seen the fights as fans and watched them, and they do tally up. But again, you've never seen him deterred, and you never. I don't think the last performance. I think a lot of people are sort of, oh, he's done. He's washed up. No, I just think Volkanovski leveled up and figured him out. Every time I watch Volkanovski fight, he looks a better version than he did the last time. And I feel like you fight that guy 3 times, you're gonna have to go 3 times better every time. So, and the first 2 fights, I thought Max Holloway had a good shout to win in both of them. So obviously the third it was a shutout, but yeah, I think when you take those things into consideration, he possibly won 2 against Volkanovski. He looked fantastic at lightweight against Islam, and yeah, it's I don't think he's missed a beat. It's just Volkanovski looked great.
And how do you feel about testing it? As I said there, he often refers to himself as the best boxer in MMA.
Yeah.
We know we just talked about there. You've got a serious boxing pedigree yourself. How do you feel you match up with him in terms of the strike in the hands?
Yeah, very good. Very well. You know, I worked with some great coaches. I boxed with some fantastic boxers, like good pro boxers for a long time, and fortunate to have that high level sparring in with these boxers for years now.
Mm.
And yeah, you know, he is obviously very good. When he's moving, slipping, and he's very he's confident, comfortable, doesn't fatigue. He's never deterred with the shot. So yeah, he is very good. But I'm very confident in my own hands. I think I back my striking against a lot of guys, most
Mm.
guys.
And it's certainly come out on top most times so far. So where do you see yourself having an advantage in this one, Arnie? Where do you think you're going to be better than Max?
I think I think they're in the striking. A lot of people were saying. I see people saying I got a big wrestling advantage to take him down and submit him or something. But I don't know. He's a good grappler. He scrambles very well. So it's yeah. I really I'm a striker. You know, we're both strikers, and I'm pretty sure that's the fight we're going to see.
Yeah. Do you feel like your striking's still underrated though? Because I definitely do. No one's ever sort of saying you're among the best strikers in MMA. But for me, watching you as someone who's got a kind of passion for striking myself, the angles, the range, the distance, the angling off, all that kind of stuff. You're so good at that.
Yeah.
And do you think that because it's a bit more technical? Do you think that kind of goes unnoticed?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You see like these guys that are like the old school guys. It's kind of a fading thing now. You used to have this sort of short, stocky wrestlers that throw like big overhands. You know,
Yeah.
A guy that comes to mind like Chad Mendes, big powerhouse.
Yeah.
You know, they're not the cleanest strikers, but they got knockout power. So you know, obviously, that's more appreciated as a fan, isn't it? You see that, and then for me, I watch someone like Wonder Boy. He's like a real technician. He's one of my favorite guys to watch. The angles he cuts and the shapes he does, all those things he does are like, it's really like beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the reason I'm not running in. Other than the Dan Hooker fight, I'm not running in with my hands by my side, swinging big shots. So yeah.
And is it fair to say, I mean, Max is a guy who he doesn't necessarily have one punch knockout power, but when he wins and gets stoppages, it tends to be by kind of overwhelming someone, the
Yeah.
volume, and he tends to kind of get stronger as the fight goes on, doesn't he? So
Yeah.
I assume that's something you're kind of wary of going into this, almost
Yeah.
pace yourself a little bit, or I don't know how you'd approach it.
No, not at all. Just just controlling the fight, controlling everything. Controlling my mind as well. Yeah, just not getting caught up in like you say, the mental side, the warfare, all that stuff. Just doing my thing, doing what I trained to do, and then keeping the cool head.
Okay, so obviously, hopefully, you're going to have your hand raised. I'm sure that's what we're planning to do. Certainly, everyone in Suffolk's hoping to see that happen. And then it would surely have to be the title fight next. It's taken you a while to get there, a bit like Leon Edwards, who we'll talk about in a bit. But you've just kept on going, kept leveling up, and now you're very much at the door. That title fight is going to be the first of all. Obviously, Volkanovski and Yair are going to fight, I think, in July. How do you see that matchup, and what do you make of those two as fighters? I know you said there, Volkanovski, you think gets better every time you see him.
Yair as well. He looks great. Last fight out against Emmett, it kind of, when they announced that fight, I thought that's exactly how it's going to go, and all other than the submission. Up close, he's elbows and knees. At range, he's long, snappy kicks. Emmett has to get close to you, throw big overhands and hooks and stuff. And Cato had success with it in their fight when they were close. He was throwing knees and the clinching elbows and negating his overhands and things like that. I thought he did a really good job. But Yair he's just like a hand grenade, Like wherever he is, there's explosive movements. If you're holding him and like on top of him, he's throwing elbows and knees. There's always things firing your way, So he's very good. But I put Volkanovski as one of the best strategists in the game, best tacticians, almost like GSP in a way. He was so tactical. He'd have a game plan. Whatever happened in the fight, he's sticking to that strategy, and he can adapt on the fly. But usually their plan's solid, and he doesn't really need to. So I think someone like Yair, he's very emotional, very yeah, he's very passionate. The way he fights with his heart on his sleeve. I feel like that is going to suit someone like Volkanovski, who's he's a cold character. He's got a plan, and he's not going to break that plan. So I think, I think he's going to get the win.
How do you feel you match up then to both those guys? And is there one that you would rather fight? You say you think Volk's going to win. Is he the one you'd rather, if you're going to win the title, is he the guy that you'd rather fight?
Yeah, definitely. That's the guy I want. He's the number one. He's the guy everyone wants, right? And he's starting to cement like a real solid legacy now. So yeah, to be able to dethrone him after this, if possible, would be the one.
And I saw Jack again saying that he once had the opportunity to spar Volkanovski back in the day when both guys were welterweights, and he said it was one of the hardest sparring rounds he's ever had. The pace of it. So, what's Jack said to you about Volkanovski, and what do you make of him in terms of?
Yeah, we haven't talked about it too much, really. Just we'll cross that hurdle with him when we get there.
Yeah. Are you planning to be cage side when that fight happens? If it happens in July, if you win this fight, step into the cage, maybe throw your hat in the ring.
No, I haven't had a thought past Max, to be honest. I haven't thought anything past him.
Fair enough. Let's talk a bit about training then, Arnie. For a long time, you were based in Montreal at TriStar, one of probably the best, most well-known gym in the world under Firas, and clearly GSP, one of the most famous students there. Then you came back over here because of the pandemic and gyms were shut and stuff, and you've been training at Renegade. And again, you've been up and down the road to Renegade during this camp. How's training been? What's it like training alongside the likes of Leon Edwards?
It's very good. Anytime you're in a camp and there's a champion there, the levels are a bit higher. The work rate is a bit higher. Everyone's pushing a bit more, and you see the guy, you see the champ in the corner sparring. It spurs you on a little bit more. So that's a special thing to have someone in the gym who's got a world title, who's achieved your dream and shown it can be done. It makes it feel a little bit more, not a whole lot more attainable when you see the guy come in the gym with his belt and showing it off, and you see the work he puts in.
How good did he look, by the way, against Usman in that rematch? That was unbelievable.
He looked great. It was as I expected. I really think that jet lag played a bigger factor than a lot of people appreciate. Not the jet lag, sorry, the altitude.
Yeah. And with training with Leon and obviously chatting with him, he is the champion. That's the direction you want to go in. Has he talked to you any about that kind of the championship mindset, anything like that? Has he given you any little tidbits of advice for these huge fights?
No. I asked him the first time I got signed for a 5-rounder something about working for it, and I think he said something about, "Oh, you're fitter than I was when I took my first one." So I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sounds good." Because I think he fought RDA, and he said they offered him a 5-rounder. It was like 5 weeks, and he was like, "Yeah, I weren't training that hard when they offered me that, but I had to pick it up 4 weeks. It was all good." So I was like, "Sweet, sounds good."
And in terms of the training scenario, then, as I say, you were in Montreal, now you're back in the UK.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the case going forward? Are you going to stay sort of UK based and continue with the Renegade thing, or is there a long-term plan there?
It's definitely a long-term plan, yeah. But it kind of all depends on what the fight is that comes up, like the opponents. Obviously, for the last few, the tall, rangy strikers, for some reason, Renegade are breeding a load of those guys, and very good operators as well, very high-level guys. And there's an abundance of them there. And but at TriStar, we've got more short, stocky wrestlers, sort of switch and throw overhands and high-paced styles like that, and more grappling-based guys. So it's a very opposing sort of styles. So one suits. But I still work with Fraz. He's a head coach. He oversees everything, and we speak to him regularly, send the sparring and all that, and he's going to be there on the fight night.
Cool. Is there, with being at home, I guess, the home comforts and stuff, is that something that factors in terms of making you happier to be back in the UK? I know, obviously, you lived out in Montreal for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just being by the sea is something I love. I live, you can't see it from my back window, but like one street over is the seafront. So, like doing my work at home and running across the seafront, just it reminds you where you come from and sort of how far you've got to go and all these things. I spoke to Joe Duffy a while ago about it. He mentioned the same thing when he went back home when he was fighting. It was sort of a reminder of like where he come from, the people he's doing it for, all those things. So it is a boost of motivation, definitely.
Cool. And with being at home, of course, every time we do one of these things, I've got to talk to you about Ipswich Town.
Yeah.
We know you're a big Ipswich Town fan. The club obviously been supporting you as well. They had you in a few months ago. I saw some video they did of you with George Edmondson, the big defender. You took him on the pads. Now George is a big unit, and he looked like he had some half decent technique. He was getting the shoulder behind the hook. What was he like?
You know what? He had I think he was surprised, and I was surprised. He like crisper punches than I thought. Like he had heavier hands. Like obviously the footballers are not like usually built like big lads, but he's what they call him, the fridge.
Yeah,
he's he's got some like heavy hands on him, and I think with a little bit of technique and stuff and like cleaning things up, he could be a big puncher.
Yeah, he's certainly a powerful lad. And I don't know if you know the Marcus Harness, one of the town.
Stars.
He's a BJJ purple belt. So there's a crossover there. I know a lot of them are big fight fans.
Yeah. I knew. I think I think he was going to be there on the day, but I think he got injured on that, like the training the day before, or the match the day before, I think. So
That's right. We'll have to maybe get you and him rolling a bit going forward.
Yeah, it wouldn't look good if I get submitted. He's something. I'm like, Jesus, edit that out.
Yeah, but I mean, it must be good. Again, you have quite a big following now in the Ipswich Town fan base. Every time you fight, we see the hashtag ITFC, and the club tend to tweet about it. That's got to feel good as a hometown boy and Ipswich Town fan to feel that you've got that kind of extra level of fandom and support behind you. Yeah,
it is. It's definitely if you get your local club behind you and stuff like that. Obviously, we see with Fabio in the boxing, it's just a massive boost. The whole town, football is the biggest sport in the country, isn't it? It's one of the biggest sports in the world. So if you can get your local football team to support you, then it's always a winner.
Absolutely, and they'll definitely be supporting you in Kansas City. Let's finish then with a prediction, then, Arnie. You've won your last two by stoppage.
Yes.
Obviously, you stopped Hooker, and then Cater, I know, was an injury, but I'm still saying your movement created that injury. So
I've heard a few people say that, and I'm gonna take it.
Well, you definitely did, mate. He went, and you weren't there, and his knee went. So there we go. That was your movement. So that's a stoppage. And now you're fighting a guy who has never been stopped. Notoriously kind of durable. Never stops coming forward. So how do you see this one playing out?
A decision win. I think he's tough as nails, so I'm not going to be. I know I've got the power and the accuracy and all those things to do the job. I believe every man can be knocked out, and he certainly put that to the test. But that's not the plan. The plan isn't to go and be the first guy to take him out, which would be nice. But so I'm going to go with that.
Superb. Well, thanks a lot, Arnie. As I say, I know a lot of people are behind you. We're all behind you in Kansas City in a few days' time, fighting Max Holloway. Anything else you want to say that I've not asked you?
No, that's perfect. It's fine.
Superb. Well, thanks again for your time, Arnie. I know how busy you are. Safe travels over to Kansas City, and we'll all be watching, supporting, and hoping you bring that W home. And then we've got a title fight on our hands, which will be very, very exciting.
That's the plan. That's it.
Superb. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, man.